There are two things that will affect your life whether you are interested in them or not: money and health. And we aren't really taught much about either of them in school. As a somewhat minimalist mom of two in her 30s who's just trying to make responsible decisions, I've been on a journey to learn more about personal finance. These are 20 lessons I learned from the Psychology of Money book that changed how I think about money. No one is crazy. We all have a reason for doing something. And sometimes it can be hard to understand why someone would make a certain financial decision, but it's all up to how risk averse we are, the upbringing we had, the situation we grew up in, and all of these different factors in our life that can make it seem like someone's making a crazy financial decision, but it might make complete sense to them. And I think the point is to judge each other less, and also to compare ourselves less. Just because someone's making this financial decision doesn't mean it's a good one for us as well, because people play different games in life. We all have different goals, and so just because someone's making this decision doesn't mean we have to do the same. The janitor. There's this story in the book that really stood out to me, and it's about Ronald Reed. He was just a regular person. He fixed cars at a gas station or swept floors. He bought his 2-bedroom house for about $12,000 when he was 38 years old, and he lived there for the rest of his life. And then when he died at 92, that's when he made all the headlines, because he had a net worth of over $8 million when he passed away, and he left about $2 million of those to his grandkids, and about $6 million of those he left to his local hospital and library. But how did he get all of that wealth, even though his income was obviously not super high? That's simply because he invested for a very long time, for decades, a little bit at a time, but it compounds over a long period of time. And that takes me to the compounding rule. When I first saw a compounding rule table, it was really crazy to me, because the littlest amount of money that you maybe invest every single month throughout a long period of time can add up so much more than you would possibly think. And that's because that little interest every year really compounds, so it grows more and more each year. And that's one of the reasons why Warren Buffett, for example, is so wealthy, is because of his longevity as well with his investments. It's not necessarily about being smarter or knowing all the rules or being very financially smart. The whole point of the book is that it's a lot more about the psychology, the way we behave, and the little habits that we have that actually make a big difference in time. The man in the car paradox. Most people, when they see a person driving an expensive car, they don't really care that much about the driver. They care more about the car, or more so they would think, wow, if I had that car, I would look so cool. They rarely look at the driver. And the reason why a lot of us crave that expensive object or crave expensive items is because what we really want deep down is respect and admiration from others. I think that's kind of a basic human desire. But what we've come to realize is that actually that respect and admiration doesn't come from the things we own. It doesn't come from that expensive car. It's more about how we make other people feel and, maybe the contribution that we actually bring to the world. And when we see a person in an expensive car, sometimes we assume that person is wealthy or they have a lot of money. But this really stuck with me from the book. The truth is, when we see someone who, for example, spent $100,000 on a car, all we know about them is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought the car. That's all we really know about them. So sometimes we'll make these assumptions that that person is rich or doing really well, but actually we don't really know that for a fact. All we know is, this image that they portray. And so for me, what I've learned and what I've been trying to do is to not compare myself or my journey to someone else's, and just focus on, my values and my goals in life. And an expensive car is not one of them right now. I'm not sure that it ever will be. The true cost of luxury. We can use our money in different ways. We can either use it to buy time and to buy options, or we can use it to buy luxury goods. But the benefits that we get from buying luxury goods very rarely outweigh the benefits that we would get from buying more time and options. And so for us, it's been really important to, even if our income increases, even if my business here gets bigger and more successful, I really want to make sure that our costs don't grow exponentially. Because if they do, then we're not going to be in a much better place than we were before. So the point is just to make the gap bigger between the income and the expenses. And that's when you can obviously save more money and be in a better financial position. Luck versus risk. When someone else fails, we tend to think it is When we see someone else fail at something, we tend to think it's due to their bad decisions. But when we look at our own failures, we tend to think it's just because of bad luck or circumstances around us. When in reality, it's probably a bit of both. It can be due to a certain decision we made that wasn't great at the time, but it can also be due to the circumstances. So I think what we do need to do is just to focus what's in our control and take charge of that rather than focusing on the circumstances that we might not be able to change. Don't wait for the market. When we bought our house, I don't think it was the best time on the market to buy. And one thing we've learned is that it's better to be in the market, so to own the property or to start investing or whatever sort of financial strategy you have, but it's better to be on the market for as long as possible versus waiting for the market to be at the right time. Because what I've learned from the Warren Buffett story, for example, is that the longevity on the market matters a lot more than just waiting for the right time to invest or, the right time to buy a house. Uncertain times are certain. So there will always be times when things go badly. And I think if there's one thing that's certain in our lives is that there will always be those times we don't expect when things go badly or things don't go as we wish they would. That's just life. But we tend to make a lot of financial decisions assuming that things will stay as they are right now. So we're assuming our income will stay the same, our situation, the market. We kind of assume things will be in a fairly similar place now as they will be in 5 years, but things can change a lot. And that's why it takes me to my next point, which is we need to give ourselves room for error, to have a bigger margin. What this means for us is that, for example, when we bought our house, we bought less than we could afford. Technically, our mortgage broker at the time had advised us, kind of the ceiling of how much we could buy, but we didn't want to go all the way up there because of this. We wanted to have some margin. We wanted to have some room there. We didn't want to be stretched so thin that if something happens, if, one of us, loses a job or loses business, then we would be in a really bad place because that's not a risk worth taking for us. We value that peace of mind a lot more than having an extra room or having a slightly bigger house. So we bought less than we could afford. We drive just one car, not because of some value or principle, simply because we don't need more than one car. We work from home a lot and my husband and I can share it when needed. But even when we have a possible expense that's coming up, we always allocate more than we think we will need. So if you've got a renovation project, if you've got, things that you want to do that you're budgeting for, we always try to give ourselves more, to give that room, like that margin of error, because we know that it's very likely that you will go over budget, and it's better to plan for more. And then if you have this unexpected nice surprise that you end up spending less, then you have that buffer to put back in savings. But just this little perspective change really helps us feel less stressed when it comes to money, and I think make better financial decisions as well. Your mind will change and you will change, because we can't really predict decisions we'll make 10 or 20 years from now. If I think about myself 10 years ago, the decisions I was making back then, or where I thought my life would be in 10 years, it would have been completely different. 10 years ago, I was still living in Romania. Now we're living in the UK. I was 23. Yeah, 23. Am I 33 now? Yeah. I was 23 years old back then. We had no kids. We had just bought our flat, if I remember correctly. I was struggling with a lot of anxiety back then. I never, ever thought I would be moving country because of that. And so I think I would have been really bad at predicting how my life would turn out 10 years later. You don't have to be smart. In the book, it mentions a lot how being in a good financial position has a lot more to do with your habits and your, daily behavior than being super smart or knowing a lot about investing or being very into trading or whatever other things the financial bros know. So he calls it a soft skill. It's more about how you behave rather than what you know. Never enough. I think especially with social media these days, it can be easy to think that we never have enough or that we always crave more. But in the book, it says there's no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and you don't need. Sometimes just learning to be more content and satisfied with the life that we already have is so much helpful than constantly seeking for more. Because the truth is, if we feel dissatisfied, it's very unlikely that buying another new thing will make us feel better. And this takes me to the next lesson, which is to keep the goalpost steady. Because if the goalpost keeps moving, then we keep being dissatisfied. One example they give in the book is the average car loan. So back in 1975, the average car loan would be about $12,000, whereas in 2003, the average car loan was about $27,000. So the thing is, if we keep moving that goalpost, if we keep looking for more, we will never truly get there because the market will change or there will be new products for us to buy and we will constantly feel the need for more. Be flexible for the right opportunity. I learned that when I have a bigger buffer between my income and my expenses, it gives me more flexibility. And I know that's a privileged position to be in, but it's also a bit intentional because regardless of the amount of income, we could always be spending more. We could always be spending almost our entire income in a month. But having that bigger buffer means it gives me more flexibility to wait for the right opportunities. So it can be things like waiting for your dream job or waiting for your dream house or whatever that might look for you. But for me, that flexibility means I have the freedom to choose who I work with, which is why I turn down more than 90% of any opportunities that come in my inbox. Not to be like virtue signaling, but it's just being able to choose the brands, for example, that I'm passionate about, the brands that I think are valuable, and not just choosing any random piece of work because I need that income for the month. Keep your money. There's a difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy. It's easy to think that someone who got wealthy is always gonna stay that way, but depending on the financial decisions they make, they may or may not. And there's so many stories in the book as well that I found inspiring of people who got wealthy but then lost it, or people who got wealthy and then made the right decisions that compounded in time, that kept their wealth or even grew it. And that's kind of the goal that we're aiming for. Have freedom in your life. The people who tend to have the most control over their life tend to be the people who are happier. And it makes sense. So it says in the book that the biggest form of wealth you can have is being able to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. My goal is not necessarily to have enough money to never work again. It's to have enough money to be able to work on what I want to work on and not being pressured to take on, projects or the types of work that would stress me out or that wouldn't bring value to me or to you, to my audience. And that's wealth to me. Wealth is invisible. So it's not the flashy, it's not rich looking. Wealth is quiet and it's something that compounds in time. I think that's why when we talk about luxury goods or expensive cars or expensive bags, all of these items, they can be flashy and it can make us assume that that's the goal and that's where we should strive to be. But actually the people who probably do the best are people who are not very flashy. They don't look like they're very rich, but actually they have this whole wealth behind them, just kind of slowly building in the background. Progress happens too slowly to notice, but setbacks happen too quickly to ignore. I really love this quote. Save just for saving. I used to always think that I had to have a saving goal, and this is something I think I've mentioned in my videos before as well. But in the book it says that we should be saving just for the sake of saving. So you don't always need a specific reason. Sometimes it can just be saving an emergency fund or saving because you want to have that buffer. You want to have that room for error or margin in your budget. And that's something I'm going to try to do a bit more of. Owning a house. The author mentions in the book how he owns his house without a mortgage. And he says it's the worst financial decision to make, but the best money decision to make. So if you look at a lot of the financial advice on YouTube, for example, or anywhere on the internet, a lot of people seem to say these days that owning your house is such a money sink, like how if you took that money and you invested it, it would bring a much bigger return in time. And I'm sure they are right, but it also matters how it affects our mental state, because owning a house can sometimes bring you a lot of invisible benefits that you might not be able to see. You might not be able to perceive like numbers on a piece of paper, but it can give you certain peace of mind. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to purchase a house as well. Sleep at night. This is kind of related to the previous point, but basically he says how any financial decision you make should simply be to help you sleep at night. There's no way to give advice to anyone's financial situation because we are all so different, because we all have different goals, we value different things, and that's okay. But the goal here is just to handle your finances in a way that helps you sleep at night. The negativity loop. This is something I'm trying trying to be more mindful of. But pessimism, that kind of negative news that you see out there, things trying to alert you to the latest negative thing that you need to be aware of, those kinds of things sound calculated and they sound smart, but optimism often sounds naive. And is one or the other right? It's probably somewhere in between. But for me, I'm just trying to be more mindful of that and focus on the things that are proven to work rather than always looking at the latest forecast or the latest negative news, because I don't feel like that's gonna serve me or help me in any way. I hope this was helpful. It's been such a good book for me to read. Let me know what money tips you have in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.